Hey guys, it's Cody. We're going to talk about fire extinguishers today in the helicopter for first quarter ASAT 2024. So first we're just going to go over the different types of fire extinguishers that we have on the aircraft, and then we're going to talk about some of the fire extinguishers you'll find in the base. Down here at Clinic 3, so we're going to look at the ones that we have down here at Clinic 3, and they're the same in all the aircraft and should be roughly the same in the bases as well. So there's mainly three classifications of fire extinguishers. They're classified to fight certain types of fires. So there's A, B, and C fire extinguishers. Type A is common combustible, so the things in your house, paper, cardboard, wood, foam mattresses, cloth bags, things like that. B fire extinguishers are flammable liquids, so fuels. And then C fire extinguishers are for electrical fires. Most of the times these fire extinguishers are going to have one of a couple agents in them. Either it's going to be compressed CO2, a dry chemical, halon, or water. We don't have any water extinguishers for fire suppression in the hangars or on the aircraft. We do have halon in the helicopters, and we're going to look at those in a second. And then we have BC fire extinguishers, which are a dry chemical agent in the bases. So we're going to take a look at those as well. So first, we're in the helicopter. We're going to find the two halon fire extinguishers first and foremost, and then we're going to talk about what is halon and how does it work, and what do we need to know as a crew member if we need to deploy this fire extinguisher. Okay guys, so this is the right seat aft facing, usually where the nurse or the paramedic sits. You can kind of see the fire extinguisher down there underneath the broom closet, at the bottom of the broom closet, what we call the shaft right there. So if we get in our seat, we should be pretty familiar with how to access the fire extinguisher. We should practice this every shift when we're checking everything. We should be checking this fire extinguisher. It's down here. This one has one bracket holding it on. Some of them have two. Just be familiar with that again. And if you don't know how to take this off in the middle of a fire, it's not the time to figure it out. But down here underneath, there's a little lever. We're gonna flip that up. It's gonna come undone, and this is just gonna fall out. And then we can remove the fire extinguisher. Okay, so we found the fire extinguisher that's by our seat underneath, to our right-hand side, kind of down below the patient's head. The second fire extinguisher is also on our side of the aircraft as well, but we share it with the right seat pilot. So if you pull back the curtain here from the broom closet, you can see the second fire extinguisher hanging here from the broom closet. That can be accessed from the front or the back of the aircraft, depending on which direction you need it. If the pilots need it or if we need it, we do have access to two of them from the back. Okay, so we're going to talk about halon specifically, since that's the fire extinguisher that's available to us in the aircraft. In all of our aircraft are halon fire extinguishers. So before you know how the halon works, or even the halon fire extinguisher, you have to understand the three things you need to have a fire, which we all know this. You have to have heat, you have to have oxygen, and you have to have fuel. So the way that halon works is halon is an asphyxiant. Halon is a clean agent. It's a compressed gas. It's a organohalogen that is it's made by combining bromide and fluoride in one or two carbons. So it's all natural. It's safe for human contact, but it is a heavy gas, so it's going to stay low, and it's an asphyxiant. So, probably not the best idea to spray it back here. So when you look at our halon extinguishers, they're halon because it says so right here on the bottle. It says halon there, it says halon here. And when you pick this up and move it, you can actually feel the halon moving back and forth because it's in a liquid state inside here. So when we look at our fire extinguisher at the beginning of the shift, we need to look at the gauge up here, make sure that it's in the green. Need to make sure our pin is intact and our seal is intact. You're also going to see on here a hydrostatic date. That just means that the cylinder itself has been tested for pressurization and is safe to maintain that pressure. When it gets really hot or really cold, especially cold with halon, the gauge can fluctuate a little bit, one way or the other, but it should still be in the green. If not, just let the pilots know, and they can look at it or call the mechanics in. So something else we need to talk about is, when do we deploy the fire extinguisher? So if you just see smoke, have it ready and you can have it out, but don't deploy it just into smoke, because that's not going to do anything. You need to find the source of the flames and the heat, and put the agent on there. So, don't do it unless you see fire, or you know where the fire is, or you're being directed to do so. If you're in a crash situation or you're in a situation where you do an emergency landing, it's probably best practice just to grab it and take it with you, because you don't know if you're going to need it on the way out. Or maybe something's going to happen when you get out and you might need it to go back in to rescue a crew member, somebody else that's with you, the patient or a bystander or something like that. So it's just good just to think about it, in your emergency procedure planning in your mind, to be able to grab that fire extinguisher and take it with you. So the next two fire extinguishers we're going to look at are our handheld fire extinguisher and our wheeled fire extinguisher. So the handheld fire extinguisher is the one here hanging on the wall. Obviously, you're going to grab it with your hand, you're going to carry it around like a backpack. The other one is obviously on wheels, it's our wheeled fire extinguisher. The difference is obviously the amount of extinguishing agent that they carry. I believe the one hanging on the wall is a 20-pound extinguisher. They're usually weighed by pounds. The one with wheels, I'm not 100% sure if it's a weight or if it's a capacity size. But we're going to talk about how to deploy those, what things we need to be looking for. So the difference between a BC extinguisher and a halon extinguisher is, remember, halon is a compressed gas, whereas a BC extinguisher is it's a dry chemical agent. It's actually sodium bicarbonate. It's a dry chemical. It works by smothering the fire versus an asphyxiant where it removes the oxygen. This is going to remove the oxygen by blanketing whatever is burning, fuel or electrical, to not allow that reaction to continue. And these fire extinguishers are traditionally pressurized with nitrogen. So with our handheld BC extinguisher, same exact things as on the halon extinguisher. Things we should look for is inspect our gauge right here. Make sure our needle's in the green, which we are. Our pin's intact. Our tag and seal is good. Our hose is there. It's free. It's not tangled up on anything. So the way that you're going to deploy this extinguisher, or even the halon extinguisher, when you need it, is you're going to remove it from its bracket wherever it's at. Pull the pin. You're going to aim at the base of the fire. You're going to aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. So either the hose or just the tip of the nozzle at the base of the fire. You're going to squeeze the handle once you've pulled the pin, and then you're going to sweep back and forth across the base of the fire until you're out of the extinguishing agent, and you back out, or you extinguish the fire and you back out. So with the wheeled fire extinguisher, it's a little bit different, but all the same pieces. Again, we have a gauge on top, we have our pin here, we have our plastic seal on the side. So to deploy this, we can move it wherever we want with the wheels. You're going to pull the pin just like before. You're going to depress that lever down. It's going to charge the canister. And then on the back side, you have your hose and your nozzle. So the hose and the nozzle just removes from this cradle. The hose unwraps and you go towards the fire. You don't have to completely deploy the hose if you don't need it, but they do recommend you deploy the entire hose. And then as soon as you open the bail, you're going to start getting extinguishing agents. So make sure that this is closed before you charge the extinguisher, or you're just going to start getting chemical and extinguishing agent sprayed out the nozzle if nobody's on it. It's best to deploy this with two people, one person on the nozzle and one person actually at the extinguisher. So a couple more things to think about, with fire suppression when you're in the back of the aircraft, or even in the ambulance, a ground truck, or really anywhere around a medicine. There's a lot of things that could be flammable. Everything we use has batteries, especially in the operating rooms and the ER, they use cautery and things like that. So think about, have a plan of how you're going to extinguish the fire if it is around a patient. Obviously, the thing we have most readily access to us is normal saline, lactated ringers, any type of medical solution, sterile water, whatever you have. You obviously can utilize to extinguish a fire if appropriate on a patient or around a patient. Some other things to think about right away is if you think there's a fire in the cabin or you think there's a fire going on with any of the equipment, try to limit the oxygen immediately without causing any harm to the patient. And then start coming up with a plan. If it's the ventilator that's shorting out and it's starting to smoke, turn it off, use your BVM, things like that, IV pumps, whatever the problem is, just try to think about those things in your day-to-day practice. So if and when it would ever happen, you kind of have a plan and you know how to move forward. But the biggest things is obviously limiting the fuel, limiting the heat, and limiting the oxygen. So we carry a lot of oxygen. So if we can limit that and, suppress the fire or whatever we can do to minimize those things, that's ideal.